Win and lose states serve to define games, giving objectives to interactive media. Yet, invariably giving us options that are right or wrong creates contention with specific views as to what is art. This conflict's place in the wider sphere of video games has existed at least subconsciously since the very first pieces of interactive electronic play. The whiplash rebuttal existing in increasingly lengthy and cinematic AAA titles, many of which scornfully attempt to disregard their nature as games in favor of using their medium to justify their absurd runtimes. To be hyper-specific and incredibly overcritical, as much fun as they were, God of War 2018 and Final Fantasy XV could have been movies and not much would have changed. This outward cry for respect through emulation of film is not a medium-wide issue, however. From Software's storytelling style that rewards curiosity and critical thinking justifies its video game format to the greatest extent in Bloodborne and Elden Ring, where beyond mechanical rewards, digging too deep and garnering too much understanding presents the player with mind-breaking eldritch consequences. The obscurity of Elden Ring's Frenzied Flame ending acts as a portrayal of wrathful nihilism that's secondary personal temptation narrative, formed through parallels between the relationships of Roundtable Knight Vike and his maiden in comparison to the player and Melina, functions near entirely because the player character is designed to serve as the player's avatar. The primary wrathful nihilism that permeates the will of the Frenzied Flame also becomes a personal endeavor for the player, as following the path of the Frenzied Flame through natural curiosity will inevitably reveal the horrors that Marika's Golden Order committed upon the Omens and nomadic merchants, inviting an emotionally invested player to tear down the wretched world their avatar inhabits. These sorts of personal narratives have existed in the medium of games for so long that player experience and nature has spent decades already serving as a defining piece of narrative. Toby Fox's Undertale uses multiple endings and metamechanics and comedy to clearly signpost a series of themes directly tied to player experience and a completionist mindset. By having LV be short for both love and level of violence, Undertale's out-of-the-way merciless route serves as an ultimate expression of destructive love, contrasting with the true pacifist route that requires an equally out-of-the-way save file reload to access. Undertale questions what it means to love a game by permanently staining a copy of the game after a merciless run is completed. So far, each of these titles, good or bad examples of games as art, have been narratively focused titles. While FromSoft's Souls-likes may be most iconic for their thrilling and difficult third-person action, these games still start with cutscenes before tutorials. We are unfairly ignoring arcade titles, ones who let plot take a backseat to gameplay, our Dig Dugs and Donkey Kongs. Enter Local Thunk's Balatro. Balatro is undeniably arcade. A brief opening animation leads directly to the play button, which drops the player in with only a small tutorial before letting Discovery take the wheel for learning how to play and eventually win. The poker-themed time sync outwardly seems to reject the idea of all games as art in this way. Sure, Balatro's visual identity is consistent, its sound design and music enchanting, but where lie its themes, its conclusions? In thinking this way, we fall into the trap arcade games accidentally lay. Letting narrative take a backseat leaves us in a field we are untrained for, finding thematic through lines in narratives near entirely constructed of our own play experience. Even the most esoteric of visual art pieces can feel inextricably tied to story created by the artist. In this way, Balatro becomes the realist game as art. A piece of art that can only be experienced through play, not by Let's Play or even a Balatro the movie. Let's tear apart the elements of Balatro's design and play to determine exactly what we can take away from Balatro through claiming victory in this addictive, Joker-filled experience, and through mechanical analysis determine what Balatro is really about. While easy to neglect, it's important to remember that Balatro does have a story with two characters, in fact. We are first introduced to Jimbo, the helpful joker who explains our objective and the rules of Balatro. Through Jimbo, we learn how to play and discard our cards, how to win rounds, and how to utilize the shop to improve our run. This isn't the last we'll see of Jimbo. Jimbo will show up again whenever we successfully defeat the boss of Ante 8, the final boss before Endless in any Balatro run, offering us praise. Jimbo will also appear whenever we lose a run, acting on our side but still teasing us for our failure in the process. Some standout lose quotes include, "Maybe go fishers more our speed," and "I'm literally a fool. What's your excuse?" Who is our second character? Astute players will recognize that Jimbo directly referring to us, the player, through the use of the second-person pronouns, means that within the narrative of Balatro, we, too, exist. Akin to the player's objective to become a Peggle master within fellow arcade title Peggle, Balatro makes it exceedingly clear we're not just playing Balatro the game, but actively playing Balatro in the story of Balatro 2. When we play Pac-Man, we merely control Pac-Man. Here, we are the very character we control. Where lies the significance with this? By having the player be an existing character within the narrative, it means that every action we take in the game has narrative weight. The actions we can then determine as canonical or significant become the ones that progress the narrative of the game forward. In Balatro, these actions exist in the form of completion progress, the unlocking of rewards in stakes, decks, and jokers, alongside the more esoterically rewarding achievements, present in some form in each of Balatro's releases. Through tying Balatro's narrative progress to, well, progression, Balatro's narrative becomes a story about playing Balatro. Each gameplay element that serves to help or hinder the player becomes a wellspring of themes and ideas through which Balatro expresses itself. We've found ourselves a grounding through which to understand and access Balatro's themes. If Balatro expresses its narrative through progression and unlocks, it makes sense to begin our approach to Balatro through the linear narrative it creates. Let's see what unlocking rewards in Balatro provides. Balatro has three major sets of unlocks: stakes, decks, and jokers. Completing Ante 8 on any deck in Balatro unlocks an increased difficulty for that deck, a higher stake, ranging from the base white stake to the most difficult gold stake. These 8 difficulties add compounding challenges to Balatro, from decreased money generation to additional conditions on jokers to simply increasing score requirements for each Ante's blinds. To unlock additional stakes for any given deck, the player must clear the prior stake, providing a clear story or path towards mastery of each deck. Beyond this, each joker in the player's collection bears a sticker with a colour matching the highest cleared stake it was present at the finish line for, presenting completion of every stake not only with each deck, but also with each joker as a recognised goal for total completion of Balatro. The other decision a player must make before starting a Balatro run beyond stake is their deck. Balatro's 14 unlockable decks are acquired, like stakes, through victory, with the exception of the first few decks being tied to collection discovery and as such, play. Balatro's decks each offer a unique style of play, each coming with either an overt upside and downside, such as Black Deck's additional joker slot at the cost of losing a playable hand, or a boon that could hold back a deck during the run. The abandoned deck's lack of face cards helps with constructing straights, but prohibits a player from truly benefiting from face card jokers without extreme investment and/or specific jokers. Balatro's deck unlocks being tied to higher stake completions pushes players towards challenging these grander difficulties in service of what lies behind the chained, locked decks on Balatro's start menu. Last comes the jokers. Arguably the most iconic element of Balatro's gameplay and the primary means of augmenting one's Balatro run. Joker unlock conditions range between simple, winning a run to unlock blueprint, and obscure, brainstorm mandating the discarding of a royal flush hand. That is to say, The unlocking of each Joker in Balatro is a task that rewards both natural discovery and curiosity. Exploration will net you the unlocking of many Jokers, but completing your Joker collection also requires express devotion to completing certain unlock requirements. Balatro proudly displays the unlock objectives of each locked Joker, deck, and voucher, both in the collection and on Balatro's main menu should one wait long enough or fiddle with the Ace of Spades that serves as the second A in Balatro's logo. What narratively binds all these forms of progression? The word here is challenge. Explicitly, decks and stakes require completion of increasingly challenging Balatro runs to unlock them, but the unlocking of Jokers provides further unique challenges that test the player's understanding and mastery of Balatro's systems. By signposting unlocks as an important part of progression in Balatro, the game herein presents challenge as an important narrative concept and not simply a vehicle by which certain game elements are gatekept from players not yet skilled enough to unlock them. This highlights and returns us to stakes. Outside of Balatro's gimmicky challenge runs that serve to highlight specific acquired skills, and self-imposed challenges in pursuit of unlocks, Balatro's stakes are the game's primary form of challenge scaling. If Balatro intends to hone in on challenge as an element of narrative, then the progression of stakes should serve to inform us as to the further ideas of Balatro and its narrative end goals. Exactly 3 types of challenges are added to any given run through an increased stake. The first challenge we are introduced to is the inhibition of freedom. Balatro's red stake, its first difficulty above base, removes the money reward for successfully defeating the small blind, limiting a player's earned money and as such inhibiting the player's ability to buy any number of run improving items at the shop. 3 rungs up the ladder at blue stake, we run into the second freedom-inhibiting mechanic, a permanent removal of 1 discard on each blind. If the red stake inhibits our ability to freely gallivant through the shop on a spending spree, blue stake inhibits our ability to fish for strong hands and forces us to give up even more cash through playing more, weaker hands to complete blinds. Both of these effects serve to limit player action and expression in service of making players make deliberate choices. With less discards and money, jokers like Sixth Sense that require a first played hand to be a single 6, or Seance that triggers on a played straight flush become less appealing. Risk becomes less desirable with less resources regardless of how fruitful the reward could be. The second type of challenge increase presented by stakes is of the most basic variety. After red stake comes green stake, which scales the score requirements for each ante at an increased rate. 3 stakes later at purple stake, this scaling increases further. If blue and red stake inhibit money through limiting player access, then green and purple serve to limit it further by forcing the player to buy more upgrades to maintain winning pace, limiting their ability to earn income through hoarded wealth. Green and purple stake force the player to make decisions. No longer can they idly take no jokers, lest they find meeting the second ante's score requirements near impossible. The final category for stake challenges comes in the form of joker conditions. Black, orange, and gold stake add a chance for each joker to contain an eternal, perishable, or rental sticker respectively, placing additional constraints on these integral game pieces. First comes black stake's eternal jokers. Unable to be sold or destroyed, the eternal sticker forces players to lock in and commit to a certain type of run before they may feel comfortable doing so. With rapidly scaling antes, the tribe may be the only way to feel comfortable in a run, but taking it early will force you to manipulate your deck to continue playing flushes. And if a series of jokers rewarding a different hand type to such an extent you can't ignore it shows up afterwards, you're potentially down a joker slot permanently. These eternal stickers, however, also present a potential boon to the player. As these jokers cannot be destroyed, spectral cards that destroy jokers, alongside the Joker Madness, lose their downside when paired with a build made entirely of eternal jokers. This, too, however, holds risk. Going down a madness path limits your Joker options entirely to eternal Jokers, the only way to preserve non-eternal Jokers being to buy many and hope madness does not hit the one you wish to hold on to, an option that only becomes more limited as further eternal Jokers are added to the build, and further, an option that might not be feasible with the limits on spending money other stakes cause. On the other end of the spectrum is Orange Stakes perishable Jokers, which last a mere 5 rounds before being disabled. While inconsequential for Jokers such as Popcorn, which would have lost all its malt at this point regardless, perishable Jokers force the player to continue spending money regardless of the quality of their build. A perfect straight build may be reliant on a perishable shortcut, leaving the player with 5 rounds to manipulate their deck for easier straights, or hoping they find another one as soon as the current one is disabled. All that remains are Gold Stakes rental Jokers. Within the store, these Jokers will only ever cost $1, the smallest denomination a Joker can cost without the assistance of a tag from skipping a blind. The cost of these rental Jokers is a tax of $3 at the end of every round before interest is calculated. Combined with the fact that rental Jokers can be either eternal or perishable in addition to their rental sticker, Balatro's rental Jokers tax the mind with the struggle of determining value into an indeterminable future. Both buying a rental Joker and selling a rental Joker can be mistakes. Taking a rental Joker almost mandates having a setup that can maintain the cost of having this tool while still being capable of pivoting out into stronger options that may show up later. Yet, the situations that require the purchase of rental Jokers will not always be so simple, leaving a player struggling with cash and slowly sinking to the ever-mounting chip requirements of higher antes. Each stake continues to apply as one ascends the ranks, meaning these challenges can and should be considered as smaller parts of one whole. Each of these additional rules serves to add more risk to Balatro. Blue and red stakes make each decision more impactful, as there's less room for error and rebounding. Green and purple force you to make these decisions by increasing the rate at which players' scoring must improve. Then the sticker stakes add additional brutal conditions to Jokers, making each decision here even more weighty. As Jimbo says, looks like the joke's on us. Balatro's presentation of risk may seem thematically implicit based on its poker theming and casino aesthetics, though positing this serves to take away from an overwhelming intentionality in Balatro's aesthetic design and display of risk. Balatro's soundtrack is composed entirely of one track, shifting slightly across 5 different versions through gameplay. Through having one looping and slightly changing track, Balatro emulates casino tricks such as the removal of timekeeping pieces and an absence of natural light to take emphasis away from the passage of real-world time and progression. Doing as such devalues failure and loss through mitigating the factor of time spent. Balatro's rotating suite of boss blinds serves a similar purpose. Losing a run to an unlucky plant in a face card build or an untimely wall serves to remove player agency from their losses in a way that empowers the value of their successes within the run. The player did everything right, it was just the game's fault. Here, the teasing Jimbo's lines become an egging on. Victory may lie only a single run away. Where Balatro's stakes create increasing risk for the player, the game pulls out every trick in its wheelhouse to make risk seem inconsequential. On a win, Jimbo will occasionally bemoan, "Too bad these chips are virtual," and even outwardly suggest winnings for himself with, "Good thing I didn't bet against you," but will never bring up anything remotely related to value or money in his lose quotes. The blind skipping mechanic is Balatro's most direct display of risk and reward. Each ante, the game will tempt the player to skip the big or small blind in return for a reward in the form of packs, money, hand levels, or free, rarer, or empowered jokers. Skipping a blind does not only just cost the player money in the form of limiting their win rewards or economy joker triggers, but also limits their options by including the skipping of a shop. Beyond this, skipping a blind makes the player effectively blind too, by removing a chance to earn information on how many points their hand is currently scoring. As situations get more dire, skipping a blind becomes more and more tempting as the rewards could serve to potentially get a run back on track. The skip blind button being an excessively eye-grabbing red that matches the shop's next round button makes the option stand out even more than the orange select button that causes the player to take on the blind's challenge. Balatro's tendency to overrepresent reward while diminishing the reality of risk reaches its breaking point at the spectral cards, the most blatantly powerful consumables. While a great deal of spectral cards offer no downside, such as the Soul and Black Hole cards that can be found in Arcana and Celestial packs respectively, the most powerful spectral cards come with explicit downsides as grand as permanently reducing hand size or destroying all but one of your jokers. A Ouija converting all your cards to certain rank can redefine an entire run, but randomness combined with the reduced hand size will often force a player onto a specific line with more force than a potent Eternal Joker, only with more chance at the front end before committal. This, however, is another method of devaluing risk. Spectral packs are much less common in shops than standard, Arcana, or Celestial packs. Placing the most identifiably dangerous choices in a less common and optional piece of the game further takes away from the risk the other options present in Balatro. Leveling up straight flush over flush feels entirely inconsequential relative to losing all your money after using a Wraith. Converting a single 6 into an ace with Death may not be as strong as creating 3 enhanced aces with Grim, but that could have potentially destroyed your ever-important Steel King. Jimbo again adds weight to this concept with a semantic finger on the scales. Jimbo's win quotes all refer to the player with a singular U, confirmed through the existence of no other possible recipients within the world of Balatro. Jimbo's lose quotes may repeat this sentiment for the sake of calling you a fool, but that quote starts with Jimbo calling himself a fool too. Beyond this, any other Jimbo lose quote that refers to the player uses a collective pronoun. We folded like a cheap suit. Time for us to shuffle off and try again. Jimbo here shifts the balance to wildly favor the winning side of playing with chance by celebrating achievement in a way that is personal to the player and places value on their actions whilst sharing the burden of loss through determining themselves as part of the failure, leaving the blame not solely on the shoulders of us. Balatro paints a picture of risk informed by manipulative pushes and temptations that mandate the player to engage in decision-making in a way that seems to push towards the game serving as a cautionary piece. Confronting the cunning methodology of Balatro brings about a discomfort and frustration befitting one who feels tricked by the game in front of them. Should the ideas surrounding chance end here, this would be an assertive conclusion. In this way, Balatro's lofty true completion requirement, unlocking each unlockable and completing Gold Stake with each Joker, serves the purpose of cautioning against repeatedly throwing oneself into situations where chance is ultimately a deciding factor. Balatro's own attempts to tempt the player to continue then become indicators of tactics one will be exposed to outside of the world of the game, turning Balatro into an anti-gambling training device. Balatro does so much more than this with risk, however. In this case, Portal's cake does exist in Jimbo's world, through the rewarding of trust. Balatro's powerful and permanently run-altering vouchers are unique among fellow shop mainstays, jokers, and packs. Vouchers do not shuffle and reset between rounds, only being replaced, purchased or otherwise, following the defeat of a boss blind. These expensive items also reward commitment through their upgraded or dependent vouchers that provide more powerful benefits at the expense of needing a prerequisite voucher to be purchased even after their unlock condition is met. Not only does their inflated cost in the interest of long-term value flagrantly fly in the face of the rest of Balatro's risk-based difficulty mechanics, the value of each original voucher maintaining independent worth from their subsequent non-guaranteed upgrade deliberately steeps the voucher as independent from the all-or-nothing approach Balatro's higher stakes drill into decision-making, with the exception of the blank voucher. For $10, the player can opt to receive no benefit. Trusting the game to hold a valuable reward behind this, the player can unlock the potent antimatter voucher by purchasing the blank voucher 10 times over runs. From this point on, players can now spend $10 to receive the chance to be rewarded with the antimatter voucher in a later shop. Antimatter's unlock requirement acts in stark contrast to any Joker's unlock requirement, which requires you to weaken your run position. Mr. Bones' lose 5 runs will come naturally through exploration. Brainstorm's discard a royal flush mandates direct and measured choice for a singular lost point scoring opportunity. Blank requires continued trust over a minimum of 10 runs that blind faith will be rewarded. And receiving the benefit of this unlock further requires continued trust that you will even see the upgraded voucher. This contrasts with other decisions made within a Balatro run. Jokers, Tarot, Planets, and Spectral cards all come with immediate benefits to a run, with the downside being the monetary cost limiting further purchase options immediately and into the future. Purchasing the blank voucher provides no immediate upside and effectively invests a future amount of money into the antimatter voucher, which on its own provides no benefits, as the additional Joker slot still requires you to spend more money on purchasing a Joker. Through its unlocking of antimatter, Balatro presents the blank voucher as a permissible form of risk steeped in reward, where a Joker might blindly lead you into forcing a full house build with its immediately applicable boons. The blank voucher offers nothing and changes how you play in no way. All you can do differently is wait for antimatter to show up. Blank voucher allows the player to make an immediate decision where the ramifications and benefits are directly visible, in comparison to how turning a card wild with the Lovers to build a flush for one hand may result in it becoming unplayable against a suit-disabling boss blind 2 antes later. This harkens towards Balatro's superstitious aesthetics. While the Jokers are pulled from a diverse and eclectic profile of references, identities, and archetypes, Balatro is willing to collect and group its alternative packs into a layer of fate-concerned supernatural aesthetics. That is to say that Balatro's Arcana, Celestial, and Spectral packs are artistically unified. Balatro's use of the Tarot is inextricably tied to an idea of future sight. The permanent nature of the changes a given tarot card makes to one or more playing cards within a deck serves as evidence to this fact. Tying this in with the Celestial packs, brimming with various planets of the solar system, we can identify permanent minor run boons through leveling up poker hands to be, again, tied to future sight through reference to astrology and planetary positions place in the world of horoscopes. The variety of supernatural phenomena present in the Spectral packs may seem to push away from its inclusion to this trend, yet a beyond coincidental number of Spectral cards befits an association with the above if we broaden our understanding of colluded theme to deal with the garnering of information beyond the natural. Medium and Ouija deal with communing beyond mortal perception. Trance and deja vu can be associated with altered states or feelings that allow us to make decisions that are impulsive or based on a hunch. Expanding our horizons through Spectral cards correlates with the existence of Soul and Black Hole cards in Arcana and Celestial packs respectively too. The collective idea here that ties this aesthetic identity back to Balatro's thesis is an associated irrationality in decision-making. In Balatro, this comes in the form of playing with chance or selecting a suboptimal Joker because of past experience. A difference in types of decisions rapidly becomes apparent through this lens. While any given run of Balatro mandates the making of decisions with consequences that are impossible to predict or even comprehend the ramifications of, many decisions in Balatro still come with immediate understandable costs and benefits. The difference between these two types of decisions is informed aesthetically. The most easily understood decisions lie with the plain blank voucher, where the most nebulous of risks become associated with the supernatural or otherwise incomprehensible reaches of outer space. Jokers drive this point home further. The Spectral card creating Sixth Sense, directly associated by name with an unproven psychic phenomena that can be used to determine decisions, comes with both the direct, comprehensible risk of providing no explicit benefit, and spending a whole hand worth of scoring on its effect, but has continued liabilities in the form of lost value from not drawing a 6 before having to play a hand, or receiving no beneficial Spectral cards. A Joker comparative in its creation of additional permanent resources is the far more mundane Certificate. While potentially filling your deck with mundane playing cards that create further stress on variance to form strong hands or consistent strategies, Certificate always provides an additional card to play with on any opening hand. Beyond this, 3 of the 4 potential seals hold value separate from scoring in the form of creating money, planet cards, or tarot that results in these sealed cards maintaining a level of intrinsic value separate of their suit or rank, offsetting the further risk filling the deck with chaff presents. Separation of the mundane and supernatural in Balatro reminds the player of their human limits, an idea emphasized in the rapidly increasing scaling of Balatro's Victory Lap Endless Mode, and the use of the less natural scientific notation for representation of numbers beyond a certain point. The game mandates the making of decisions with incomplete knowledge. Risk is invariably a factor all players must grapple with on their path towards completion of Gold Stake. Balatro simply requests a recognition of decisions you truly understand and ones you must rely on your sixth sense for, and ultimately trusts you to make the correct decision. Matter Games' Egg Squeeze presents a 60 to 180 minute campaign experience in of which the player character, Subject 399, is tested for latent psychokinetic abilities through the squeezing of eggs. Interacting with Egg Squeeze is a one-button experience. Using controller or mouse, the player holds down their squeeze button until they either let go or the egg breaks. Each egg's shell strength is randomly determined, and capable of resisting the force of a squeeze for anywhere between 3 and 10 seconds. Egg Squeeze offers no indicator of any given egg's durability, nor do they trend over multiple eggs in any way. To win Egg Squeeze, the player must accumulate points by squeezing eggs, receiving additional points and a faster completion for squeezes that are closer to the limit the egg can take. Players lose Egg Squeeze from day 2 of the campaign and onwards by breaking too many eggs in succession, as Subject 399's sanity is drained by the ordeal. Egg Squeeze is as if Balatro contained only its most volatile game pieces. The rainbow egg is the glass card, the purple egg its Ankh. Balatro's offering of mundane and consistent tools is what keeps a Balatro win or loss from being entirely vibes-based as an Egg Squeeze one could potentially be. Egg Squeeze's third and final campaign day presents the player with not only additional distractions while squeezing eggs in the form of a live stream chat and fluctuating stock market among others, but also with calls from investors that offer incredibly high-risk gambles on your performance on the next egg, in return for exorbitant scoring opportunities that can outright finish the day from a fraction of the point scoring requirement. These distractions and gambles can be considered analogous to Balatro's Joker stickers from its higher stakes. You may not take the rental Joker, but you will inevitably spend time considering the consequences of taking or leaving it, ones you cannot possibly completely fathom with your given information. Where Balatro differs from Egg Squeeze in this comparison is information. Reaching this point in Egg Squeeze is a short experience made entirely of basic and chance-based gameplay components. To ever reach Eternal Jokers, the player must have proven themselves skilled enough to have completed 3 runs on increasingly scaled difficulties before Balatro is ready to offer them the increased stress and deliberation of stickered Jokers and truly consequential decision-making. Balatro transcends its repeat arcade experience to tell an expanding narrative, only willing to unravel itself through both win and loss. To truly understand what chance and risk are to Balatro, one must make bad decisions, taking pareidolia without a way to reroll or evade a potential plant, or changing all their cards into kings with a Ouija while a hack is present in the shop. Only through reaping the consequences of these decisions can one come to understand the futility in trying to comprehend and understand the ramifications of their choices. Balatro implores one to recognize their cognitive limitations by downplaying these very same losses at every turn so explicitly that the player cannot help but draw comparisons to predatory practices of the very same aesthetic nature. But at each of these turns, Balatro recognizes that against insurmountable odds, the safe decision will not always bring success. Through the power of the cosmos and the supernatural, we as players must accept that we cannot overcome all challenges through the safe path. Madness, going from an utterly unplayable Joker of extreme variance at lower stakes into a viable and powerful tool with the introduction of Eternal Jokers, serves as the most glaring indicator of difference between making an inherently dangerous choice uninformed and making the exact same one with knowledge acquired through play and practice. We cannot possibly know everything. No decision can be truly 100% informed, but going with your gut is not inherently wrong. The difference in decision-making Balatro here suggests is that one should not make a decision based on their lucky numbers, picking a Joker that has proven successful in the past, or determining a build based off of early hands played. But instead, to flip a coin and use your excitement or disappointment at the result to determine which decision you actually make, i.e. deciding you will purchase the grabber voucher for an additional hand, even if it means spending all your money, as it will allow you to scale spare trousers even faster. In this way, Balatro revels in the joys of chances taken and rewards paid, by glorifying not the scale or risk of the player's decisions in either the direction of safe or dangerous, but instead values an understanding and rationale to play a choice beyond the hoping of synergistic pieces or immediate chance-based payoffs. The game here does not reject the superstitions of fate, as is abundantly clear in the value of the tarot within Balatro, but instead promotes an exercise in recognition of internal bias and self-introspection to determine one's own capabilities and their upwards limits. Balatro further revels in chance through fun. Spectral cards are of the greatest boon when they are not the make-or-break moment of a run, presenting wellsprings of opportunity for excellence or presentation of skill through flexibility in a way that creates immense personal reward and fulfillment for players beyond compliments from guide and friend Jimbo. Ultimately, Local Thunk's Balatro becomes a tale about the beauties and joys of self-expression, and the determining of such as separate from a world of chance and luck. Indeed, Balatro is a lesson in escaping the humility of chance by recognizing our own reliance on it as both provider and excuse. We do not win or lose through luck, but in spite of it either towards or against victory. Thank you very much for listening. If you got to the end and you don't necessarily agree with any of my conclusions, I think that's awesome and would love to hear what you think instead. At the very least, I hope you come away from this video having learned something you didn't know about Balatro. This essay was a really exciting one for me to write. If you've listened to my Metaphor Re Fantasio one that I uploaded before this, you'll know I'm a very big fan of games that use their medium effectively, and all Balatro really has is its medium. The concept for this started originally when I first came to the observation in the middle of this video that Balatro's singular looping soundtrack is very much like the tactics they use at casinos to keep you playing. From here, it just felt like every single mechanic of Balatro played into these ideas of risk and chance beyond just being oh well, the game is poker, so of course there's gambling. By far the most compelling piece of evidence from my perspective is right at the start with the way the stakes combine and scale. I think they all sort of play into these ideas of risk, and the game forcing you to take these big chances plays into this idea of skill expression in a world that is ultimately full of chance. I think that by sort of in the middle talking about a possible conclusion of a negative or like anti-risk sort of assessment sort of takes away from the positive note I ended on. I wish maybe, even just before I brought up egg squeeze or something, I'd maybe hammered home that point of like skill expression and personal expression and such. I think that's a really important part of what Balatro is. Going back to that loving games as art, the ones that are games specifically, a friend recently suggested I take another look after I played it originally at Virtue's Last Reward. The more I've been thinking about it, the more excited I am to go into a visual novel that has interconnectedness between its various routes. Hopefully that'll be down the pipeline of essays I write very, very soon. I feel like there was definitely space in here to mention the anaglyph and petroglyph vouchers, which have a supernatural element to them and exist in that same sort of nebulous zone where you can't really determine the consequences of them. My favorite decks to play with are the Ghost deck and the Anaglyph deck, and I'm only really considering now that this is over that might be subconsciously tied to what I took away from Balatro. I feel like they most emphatically represent how I feel about the game. Additionally, in finding examples or just doing additional research for this video, I looked at, for the first time, the demo-exclusive content of the game. I feel like the content that didn't make the cut for the full game, like the braided deck, which cares about your most played hand type in, like, overall, or the vouchers that give you additional money on your next run, them not making the cut really serves as an example of, like, the clearness of Balatro's theming, that each run is separate and a chance to express yourself differently. The mistakes from one run don't carry over to the next, and in the same way you can't bolster a run with your previous ones. If you want to apply this to a wider societal, real-life look at skill expression, this is like an anti-sort of nepotism message. No one starts with an advantage, everyone's on the same playing field here. Balatro is just one of many things I fell in love with in 2024, and I'm super excited to fall in love with plenty of more stuff this year. If you think there's anything that might be up my alley, please let me know, and I'd love to experience and perhaps even do a video on it too. Thank you again.